Carney's military splurge. Canadians demand to know where the money is really going. Prime Minister Mark Carney's sudden pledge to ramp up Canada's defense spending to 5% of GDP has ignited fierce national debate. Coming just months after his surprise victory in the April 28 snap election, Carney's pivot from cautious campaign language to sweeping military investment has left many Canadians stunned. While the government is framing the move as a bold response to growing global threats, particularly in the Arctic, critics across the political spectrum are questioning both the urgency and the accounting behind the plan. The announcement's timing, scope, and lack of clear fiscal framework have prompted a tidal wave of scrutiny, especially from opposition parties and concerned citizens demanding accountability. At the core of the controversy is the simple math. Canada's current defense budget is roughly $34 billion annually. Carney's proposal aims to more than triple that amount over the next decade, reaching an estimated $110 billion a year by 2035. While defense advocates agree that Canada's military has been chronically underfunded, few expected such a sharp and sudden leap. Even more puzzling is Carney's assurance that this won't require immediate trade-offs or cuts, despite the sheer scale of the increase. During a press conference, he vaguely gestured toward later decade adjustments, implying that decisions about what other government services might be cut or how taxes might rise would be deferred. But deferral without explanation has only deepened public concern. Carney's claim that 1.5% of the 5% GDP figure will go toward so-called defense industrial pledges has raised eyebrows. These expenditures include investments in infrastructure like ports, telecommunications, and mineral development, sectors already receiving funding from provincial governments or private corporations. Critics argue that Carney is stretching the definition of defense spending to include existing projects and then counting them toward Canada's NATO obligations. While such tactics might look good on international spreadsheets, they do little to assure Canadians that these investments will meaningfully improve the readiness or capability of the armed forces. The second part of the spending plan, covering the remaining 3.5% of GDP, remains murky. Carney has mentioned big-ticket items like icebreakers, submarines, and F-35 fighter jets, alongside promises of better pay and equipment for troops. But beyond these headline purchases, little is known about how the massive budget will be spent. There is talk of Canada becoming a hub for advanced defense manufacturing, including producing drones and aerospace technology, yet no specifics about which companies will be involved, how much of the technology will be developed domestically, or what partnerships are being formed with European firms. For a country with little current capacity in drone manufacturing, this transformation would require massive upfront investments. The New Democratic Party and Bloc Québécois have voiced strong opposition to the scale of the defense commitment, especially given that it was not featured in Carney's campaign platform. NDP MP Heather McPherson argued that the Liberals are writing a blank check and taking the country in a direction voters never authorized. The Bloc echoed these sentiments, emphasizing Quebec's priorities in social services and climate infrastructure. Even Conservatives, traditionally more pro-defense, are cautious, demanding a formal budget and warning against what they call creative accounting. Their concern is less about spending in principle and more about how it's being portrayed, and whether the government is honest about its impact. The public reaction has been mixed. Polls suggest that most Canadians support increasing defense spending to meet NATO's 2% target, but enthusiasm quickly drops when the conversation shifts to 5%. Many citizens are asking the same basic questions. Where will the money come from? Will it mean cuts to healthcare, education, or climate initiatives? And will any of this actually result in tangible improvements for Canada's military, or just balloon into a boondoggle of bureaucracy and foreign partnerships that leave Canadian workers and troops behind? One major fear is that the new industrial spending might benefit the politically connected more than the armed forces. Carney has yet to release a full disclosure of his financial interests, prompting questions about whether companies linked to major financial institutions, like Brookfield, could stand to gain. Without transparency on which companies are bidding for contracts, and without a federal budget to map out allocations, Canadians are being asked to trust vague assurances about economic benefits and job creation. For a government that campaigned on fiscal responsibility and evidence-based policy, this kind of opaqueness is hard to defend. What's especially troubling to some observers is the government's apparent attempt to reframe existing provincial and private infrastructure investments as national defense contributions. This strategy not only muddies the waters about how much new spending is actually happening, it also raises questions about whether Canada is attempting to meet international obligations through accounting tricks rather than substantive military expansion. Allies might accept these figures on paper, but whether such moves build real strategic capacity is another matter. Adding to the unease is the media's role in shaping the narrative. During a recent press conference, a journalist asked Carney whether Canada should consider joining the European Union, a bizarre suggestion that even Carney himself dismissed. The episode highlighted a broader concern that legacy media may be helping frame elite-driven policy agendas as organic public sentiment. Most Canadians aren't clamoring to join the EU, nor are they calling for defense budgets that rival superpowers. They want accountability, smart spending, and above all, results that actually improve national security. Carney insists that this defense pivot will strengthen Canada's economy by creating high-paying jobs and building advanced industries at home. But critics say that without proof of execution and concrete budget plans, these promises feel more like a sales pitch than a governing strategy. The idea of building a military-industrial complex from scratch is ambitious, but it's also risky. Will these Canadian companies be truly independent, or will they simply be domestic shells for larger foreign firms? Who will control the intellectual property? And will the benefits actually reach the average Canadian worker? At its heart, this debate isn't just about dollars and defense, it's about trust. Canadians are being told to accept a long-term, high-cost investment plan without seeing the blueprint. They're being promised economic gains and strategic advantages, yet offered few specifics. While Carney maintains that the defense buildup is a response to emerging global threats and Arctic vulnerabilities, the lack of transparency and the rapid shift in policy are making people nervous. They want to believe in a stronger, safer Canada, but they also want to know who benefits, who pays, and whether they've been told the whole truth. Until a full federal budget is released, with a detailed outline of expenditures, revenue plans, and long-term projections, this defense spending commitment remains a leap of faith. With billions on the table and Canada's geopolitical stance shifting, Canadians are right to ask hard questions. They're not rejecting the need for security. They're demanding that promises be matched by plans and ambition grounded in accountability.